Joe Morrissey is joining us now live from Richmond. Joe, a very famous lawyer, as you know, in the Central Virginia area. And there was a time where he won something like 250 jury trials straight. I forget the number. It's a big number. He also served in the House of Delegates in Richmond, and he ran for mayor in 2016, finishing third there. And full disclosure, number one, Joe's my friend, FOJ, friend of John. Number two, I endorsed Joe for mayor. And although I was ecstatic in 2016 that Trump won, I was very disappointed that Joe didn't. I think he would have been a phenomenal mayor of Richmond. He's a great guy, and he's a Catholic. We got to talk about that, too. Oh, my God, so much to talk about. Joe, great to have you, man.
John, good to be on the show. I hope your summer is going well.
Never better, Joe, here in Washington, D.C., but, I mean, so much to talk about, so little time. Let's first get to the Michael Cohen plea. What does this mean for Trump? How did this go down?
Okay. First of all, let me try to, as I always do, separate the fact from the fiction. What we have going on one side, you've got the Chris Cuomo and Anderson Cooper from CNN, that if you listen to them, impeachment proceedings begin right after the midterm elections. If you looked at Fox News, they used words describing him as on his game, the president as on his game, unflappable, optimistic man. The truth is somewhere in the middle, and that's what I'm going to try to give you right now, okay?
All right, Joe.
Number one, Manafort pled guilty to 8 counts of tax evasion and bank fraud. 3 points. Number one, it had nothing to do with the special counsel Mueller's investigation of Russian collusion. 0. The trial judge said, I don't even want to hear the name Trump mentioned. Number 2, it's not surprising that Manafort was found guilty given the mountain of evidence against him as uttered by the witnesses for the prosecution. The verdict, the only thing surprising would have been if he was acquitted of all the charges. And 3, Manafort's guilty verdict does not implicate the president one iota. Nothing connects him to Trump other than you can say the man that led his successful presidential campaign was convicted. So put Manafort to the side, okay? Mm-hmm. Push it to the left. It has nothing. There's no connection, no tenuous connection with the president whatsoever. Now let's turn to Cohen. All right. He pled guilty to multiple counts of tax evasion, nothing to do with the president, and then also breaking election laws. That's the connection to the president. Now, here's what everybody in the media is jumping on board the bandwagon. During his allocution, Michael Cohen, that's when Michael Cohen said to the judge, I did this, this, and this. He made a very gratuitous comment. Quote, I did so at the direction of a candidate for federal office. Just a cheeky way of saying, I did so at the direction of Trump. Okay? Now, that is the only connection to Trump. But let's dig into the weeds. Number one, the U.S. attorney in his charging instrument, in his information, did not even allege that. That's really important. In other words, a comment made by Cohen, to wit, I did so at the direction of the president, wasn't even alleged in the charging information. And number 2, where is the backup? Where is the corroboration to Cohen's gratuitous comment, I did so at the president? What does that mean? Alan Dershowitz put it very well. He said it was the case against the president for election laws is very, very, very weak if all you have is Cohen. Let me say this right now. The chance of the president being indicted for election law violations, I put as close to 0 as you can be. Mm-hmm. Okay? So a lot of hype boils down to one single gratuitous comment by Cohen that, unless they've got backup, is implicates the president Almost not at all. Let me pause there for a moment.
Okay, let's just re-intro here. So we're with Joe Morrissey, ran for mayor of Richmond, former House of Delegates member, famous lawyer in Richmond, one of the best defense lawyers probably in the history of Virginia, won over 250 consecutive jury trials at one time. Unbelievable record, really knows what he's talking about. So, Joe, let's break this down here on the John Frederick Show. So it's very dubious to connect Trump to the Cohen thing as far as campaign finance violations. So let me ask a couple questions. Number one, is there any illegality, forget campaigns a second, is there any illegality to pay somebody if they want to have a story on you or you think they're going to tarnish your brand or something, and you offer them $150,000 and they say, okay, I'll take the money to shut up? I mean, is there anything illegal with that?
Thank you for that question. Thank you very much, because 9 out of 10 people think that there's something illegal about it. John, there is nothing, absolutely nothing illegal with buying someone's silence. I can't be any clearer than that. If President Trump had spent $130,000 and they've got him on video, here, Stormy Daniels, here, Miss Karen McDougal, Playboy Playmate, here is $150,000 to each of you. I want you to be silent. There is nothing illegal with that. If Cohen says, here is $150,000 to both of you, I want you to to be silent, nothing is illegal. If Cohen says, I'm giving you this money to influence the election, nothing illegal. It's called TV commercials. Every time you see a TV commercial and a political campaign, it is money spent to influence an election. It's not illegal. What is illegal is the following: spending money to influence an election and not reporting it. Do you follow me?
Yes.
That's what's illegal. So I hope I have cleared that up. To me, there is no doubt whatsoever that money was paid by Cohen to these women. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Now, why was it done? Was it to buy her silence? Yes. We still don't have any crime. Okay? The question is, did you buy her silence because you didn't want to embarrass your friend? That's nothing wrong. Didn't want to embarrass Melania, that her husband may have had an affair? Not illegal. It's only illegal if you spend money to influence an election and you don't report it. 3 things have to occur.
So it's very dubious. I mean, it's like you really have to find the trail here and say, was this, should this have been reported as a campaign donation? I mean, the president paid it out of his own pocket. It's not like he paid it out of his campaign. So right. I guess if he simply reported it, then you'd have no problem. But it's very difficult. And I keep going back to the John Edwards case because I followed that very closely. And remember, John Edwards had a donor. I mean, you can call Michael Cohen his lawyer. Edwards had a donor, which is a very mature woman in North Carolina, big Edwards fan. And he had a donor, and the donor paid directly the person that he was having the affair, that he had the child with, in order to buy her silence during the campaign and set her up. I mean, Edwards didn't have the money to do that. They didn't want the trail, so the donor paid her. Now, he went on trial for that, saying that that should have been reported as campaign funds. And remember, that jury was out like a half a day or something. It was very fast, and they came back, hung jury, and that was the end of it. So what is the difference between the Edwards trial and his acquittal in this situation?
There is no difference. Senator Edwards, a candidate for president, had a 80, 90-year-old supporter. She was a Southern, elderly Southern woman, I believe, from North Carolina, who gave up to $1 million to Senator Edwards' then girlfriend, who had a birthed a child of Edwards. Now, the question for the jury was, okay, was money spent? Yes. Was it reported? No. Okay. Was it done to influence the election? That's the hiccup. Or was it simply not to embarrass, so it wouldn't embarrass Edwards and his family? Mm-hmm. The case for Edwards was much, much stronger than the government's case against Edwards was far more stronger than the government's case against President Trump here. And do you remember the tapes that came out? Trump is speaking with his lawyer, Michael Cohen, and he says, listen, don't use cash. I mean, that's very exculpatory. Mm-hmm. In other words, use a check. And so again, you're spot on when you're saying that the Edwards case, where Edwards was acquitted, is close to this, but again, it was much stronger. I simply don't see a criminal case that can be made out against the president based on Michael Cohen. And all of your platitudes that you had to say about me, John, which are very kind, I don't know if I deserve them, you also didn't mention that I'm a Democrat, a very strong Democrat, but I analyze the facts, okay, and I simply do not see a case against the president given Michael Cohen's conviction.
You are a Democrat and you're a straight shooter, and that's why I'm your good friend and I love our conversations. I love having you on, and you would have been a phenomenal mayor of Richmond, I can tell you that. I was a big supporter of that run. But, Joe, this is the way you broke this down. We're with Joe Morrissey, very famous lawyer in the Central Virginia area in Richmond today, giving the analyzation here, basically saying they don't have anything on the president whatsoever. But, you know, your opening was interesting. You said if you listen to Fox News, they're saying there's nothing going on here. You listen to CNN, and they're saying impeachment is already starting. And it is somewhere in the middle. But I think what was telling, I played a clip earlier from Kamala Harris, who was going to run for president, California senator, African-American woman, hates Trump. That's her whole campaign. Trump sucks. But she was very careful in not throwing out bombs. To me, politicians, when they hedge a little bit, you know, I think she's basically come to the same conclusion. All right, Joe, I want to shift gears, if I may, and thank you for that analysis, to a very tough topic for the both of us. Both of us are Catholic. We're practicing Catholics. And I cannot tell you, Joe, how sick and troubled I am by the allegations that came out of the indictment in Pennsylvania on the Catholic Church and this 70-year cover-up, at least 1,000 victims. I mean, it almost seems like there was like a culture going on. And, you know, both of us Catholic, and I've said this all week on the radio, I mean, I grew up in Madison, New Jersey, 3 blocks from St. Vincent's Catholic Church. And as a young man, you know, that was my sanctuary. And if I saw that collar walking down the street, that was safe. I mean, my parents taught me the collar means you're safe. Quite the opposite based on these indictments. And I thought the Pope's response was tepid. The Vatican, they put out a statement. It was a snooze fest. What does the Catholic Church here, Joe, have to do?
Okay. The short answer is the Catholic Church has got to take a much, much more strident, aggressive position. All right. And whilst I like the current Pope, I think he's been a progressive Pope. I think he's been good for the Catholic Church insofar as brought more Catholics, some disenfranchised, back to the church. His position wasn't nearly strong enough. John, I too grew up in the Catholic Church. I went to St. Michael's in Annandale, Virginia. I went to Bishop O'Connell in Arlington, Virginia. I mean, I went to a Jesuit law school, Georgetown. And I've got to say, I always found the priest to be, while sometimes stern, not as stern as the nuns, but unfailingly polite and absolutely nothing ever did I ever see anything untoward by any priest whatsoever. But it's clear that with this grand jury indictment from Pennsylvania, that there were hundreds of abusive priests, okay, and thousands of victims. And at the end of the day, those victims have got to be saved. The Catholic Church has got to address it, not just monetarily, but has to take full ownership of what occurred. This issue has been going on now for a decade, okay? It's, if former priests abused children and there are not statute of limitations, they need to be prosecuted. They need to be imprisoned. It cannot take place. And the saddest part is this. There are so many decent, noble, honorable priests out there who are being sullied by the untoward behavior of other priests over the past decade, that it tears them down, brings them down as well. And that's that's also a very sad component.
I think you're spot on. I agree with you 100%. I think Pope Francis needs a much more assertive tone here as he approaches this going forward. And same with me. I mean, all the priests that I knew when I grew up, were just the most honorable people ever. So I never experienced any of this, but it's just a sad week here for the Catholic Church and the Catholic faith, no doubt. Joe Morrissey joining us. Joe, I got to get you your own radio show. You'd be fantastic giving advice, taking call-ins. I mean, come on, man. Think about the possibilities. John Fredericks Radio Network.